Yes, thanks for joining me. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. The 49ers lose in snowy Buffalo. Let's talk about that a little bit, but we have a lot of big picture items. If you're new to the John Lund Talks podcast, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Formerly of KNBR, thank you for hanging out with me. Here's what we do before we get into the big picture items and quickly about Sunday night, because we're not going to dwell too much on it. But it's the John Lund Talks podcast, so make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and tell all your friends. Best way to get a hold of me is on social media at John Lund Radio on Twitter and Instagram. I check mostly on Twitter, but I'd love to get your questions, comments, thoughts, and I'll use them during the show. Again, at John Lund Radio and John Lund Talks podcast and YouTube channel. Subscribe where you get your podcast or on YouTube. We'll be doing all sorts of collaborations, guests. I'm going to be doing lives this week, so make sure that you stay tuned to get all the information as we've hit December and the 49ers are 5-7. All right, let's quickly start with the game. I don't care about the score. I don't care about the stats. There's a few things that rankle me about this game. One, I'm not here to advocate. Before we get into, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see 49ers snowed 5-7 tank time. CMC hurt, injuries, quit, 2020 and now. Brock's Worth shut Fred down and window shut. It sounds like we're on Jeopardy or something on Saturday Night Live. Those are your categories. But I'll get to those in just a second. But as far as the Buffalo game is concerned, there's a few things. The worst thing you can say about an athlete, the biggest curse word, curse term, the thing they don't want to be accused of, quitting. And they quit. I'm not saying that they quit on Kyle. I'm not saying Kyle lost the locker room. I'm certainly not saying you fire Kyle Shanahan. But for a team who had aspirations of winning the Super Bowl, and we're going to get back there, we're going to win. We were so close. We had Kansas City in overtime. No problem. Don't care that Brandon Ayuk was out, and don't care that all these injuries, and don't care that Trent held out, and don't care that the Pearsall situation. All this is snowballed into a season that they just can't get away from. And we kept saying it on the air, and we kept saying it, and you just get a vibe. I've been doing this 25 years. You just get a vibe about a team, both good and bad. You know when it's a magical season as a fan. You do. You can just feel it. Everything works. Remember the Giants in 2021 when every guy they'd bring up, every move they'd make, everything they'd do, gold, hit. You just knew it. You're watching it. You're going, this is magical. You just know. You can feel it, right? Opposite thing happened this year with the Niners. It was 2020 all over again, injuries and the such. And injuries, as I tell you many times, and you're probably sick of hearing from my mouth, they're either an excuse or an explanation. And in this case, CMC went down again tonight, and Brock and Purdy and Bosa and Trent and Debo and Kittle and Ayuk and Jennings and Pearsall and Hargrave and Ward and Lenore and Mitchell and Hufanga and Greenlaw, and it just goes on and on and on. And nobody wants to hear it in the league. Next man up. Well, you can't have 22 next man ups. It just doesn't work that way. So the 49ers have had too many injuries, and it's not an excuse. It's an explanation. So let's get that out of the way. Injuries are an explanation, but it doesn't explain quitting in Buffalo. Maybe they're frustrated. I get it. It doesn't explain quitting in Green Bay. It doesn't. So they're frustrated. They thought they were going to win a Super Bowl. They've been let down. They're frustrated. They say to hell with it. I get it. It's human nature. You don't have to be an athlete to understand that, and I'm certainly not an athlete. But I understand the frustration, and I understand them kind of quitting. As far as Kyle is concerned, I'm not advocating for a second he be fired. I'm not advocating that at all. That's the easy thing. Fans drink a few beers. I've done it. Hey, he should be fired. Okay. Who's better? Who's better than Kyle Shanahan right now? He'll have a job before he hangs up the phone. But that doesn't mean he's beyond reproach. Team wasn't prepared to play in Buffalo. I get it. They don't practice. There's no snowstorms. They didn't go to Tahoe to get ready for this game. But Kyle Shanahan's from Colorado. His dad coached in Colorado. He's seen snow. He's coached in snow. He was in Cleveland. He's seen slick fields. North-south running. Chris Collinsworth kept saying, get the speed going. It was like a minute, halfway into the game, Kyle went, maybe we should try this and try this. Maybe you should have thought of that going into the game. Look, Buffalo's more versed in that weather, and I'm not saying they still wouldn't have won. They dominated the game. And the 49ers looked lifeless. It looked like Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly all over again. I'm watching these same 49ers going, who the hell are these guys? These aren't Kyle Shanahan's 49ers. Well, maybe they're the early versions of Kyle Shanahan's 49ers. But they just didn't look prepared. They looked lethargic. They weren't into it. And the other thing you can charge Kyle with is Kyle Juszczyk's a great guy. He has 3 carries on the season. The small flicker of hope that your season had down 21-3 at Buffalo's goal line, you don't give a guy who has 3 carries all season long and Kyle Juszczyk the ball when Jordan Mason is sitting there averaging 8 yards a carry. It's malpractice. It's stupid. Doesn't mean Kyle's a bad coach. Doesn't mean Kyle should be fired. That's not what I'm saying, but it's malpractice. They weren't prepared. You don't give Juszczyk the ball. They look lethargic. That's all on Kyle. Kyle said earlier this week, Kyle Shanahan, that the media was going to judge him. He needs to judge himself. Someone in those offices need to be able to say something to Kyle Shanahan. He needs to bring in an offensive assistant. He needs to bring in someone to help him. He certainly needs a new defensive coordinator. It's not Nick Sorensen. Hello, Robert Saleh. Get him on the phone. He shouldn't be in Green Bay helping out his buddy. He should be in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator next year. And I don't know what naked pictures the special teams coach of the 49ers, Brian Schneider, has of someone in that building. But he shouldn't be employed by the 49ers either. And look at me talking about who should be employed. But I'll tell you this. He shouldn't be employed as the special teams coordinator. So those changes need to happen. So big picture is everyone screams for Kyle, and has Kyle lost the locker room and everything? No, he is not. But sweeping changes need to be made with Kyle Shanahan, and he is directly responsible for the lethargic nature of the team and some of the play calls and the unprepared nature of this team against Buffalo. Okay, having said that, because I don't care about the Buffalo game, the big picture items are at 5-7, where is this team? Now, look, the NFC West isn't very good. I know Seattle won in New York against the Jets on Sunday, and they're 7-5. They were down 21-7 and very easily could have and should have lost that game to Aaron Rodgers. Jets aren't good. The Rams aren't great. The Cardinals were the toast of the NFC West until 2 weeks ago, and they lost, and they're a 500 team again. So, as George Kittle said after the game, could they win this division still this year? They could. Or would it be a better idea to rest guys who have played in many playoff games, injured, older, expensive? I would take stock now. CMC doesn't need to come back. I don't know that he's going to, but I've got to seriously question whether CMC is ever going to be himself. Fred Warner's got a bad ankle, and while I love Fred Warner and think his resolve is great, he needs to be done for the season. Don't know if I need to bring back Dre Greenlaw. I'm not sure financially if they can bring him back, and we'll get to Brock in just a second. But there's a lot of guys that are older and banged up on this team, and you know what? They just need a season. And then as far as the offseason is concerned, the bigger picture is, okay, are they done for the season? They should be. Are they done for good? Is this group going to go down as one of the best groups of guys, most talented groups of guys to not win a Super Bowl? I wouldn't say that yet. I would still say that they would have the most talent, not the most young talent, but the most talent in the NFC West next year, which isn't saying a lot, but teams bounce back all the time. The Eagles were a mess last year. Jason Kelce retires, and look where the Eagles are. They fixed their defense. That's where it's got to start. This defense is not good. Thank you, Captain Obvious. The defensive line is not what it was, and that's where this team was always one of the best in the league. They need somebody opposite Bosa. Armstead was done, but what they did to try to plug the inside has not worked. They need defensive linemen. They need depth. Don't know if Hargrave is going to be a guy that they can afford, especially because they're going to sign Brock Purdy. That's going to be a theme throughout the show today. So all these things need to be done in the offseason. I don't think they're done for good. I think that's premature. Now let's go to Brock Purdy. I love Brock Purdy. I'm not down on Brock Purdy. But let's be realistic to what Brock Purdy is. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but I kind of look at him like I used to with Jared Goff, where I thought to myself, they can do better than Goff, but then you see Jared Goff with the Lions as an MVP candidate. But you know why he is? Because he has the perfect conditions. He has all this talent around him. He has a solid defense. He has 2 great running backs. He has receivers galore. He has a tremendous tight end. He has one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in the league. And oh, by the way, he plays indoors. And most of their games are indoors, even the road games. So Jared Goff has perfect conditions. And in those perfect conditions, Goff can be an MVP candidate. And in those perfect conditions, Brock Purdy can be an MVP candidate. But he's never going to be Josh Allen. He's never going to carry your team. And isn't that what a $50 or $60 million quarterback should be? Now, not necessarily, because the place you find yourself in the NFL, and I don't know why God only made, 15 of these guys. He didn't make 32, and he certainly didn't make backups. But quarterback is the most impossible position to fill in the league. Ask the Niners, Trey Lance. It's nearly impossible to get a great one. And when you get a good one, you keep him and you overpay him. But what that means is you're going to have to lose players off your team. So a team that needs young talent, a team that needs an infusion, especially on the defensive side of the ball, isn't going to be able to get it because Brock Purdy's got to be paid all this money. So at the end of last year, would I have given Brock Purdy the money? Absolutely, positively. This year, I'm not down on him. I'm just realistic about him. Is Sam Darnold almost as good as Brock Purdy? I don't know. Maybe he is. But they have to think long and hard before they give him $50 to $60 million because that could cost you Dre Greenlaw. That could cost you, that's going to cost you Deebo Samuel. There are 3 or 4 players on this roster right now that have prominent roles that won't be here next year because Brock Purdy's going to get paid. Ward's not going to be here. Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, you feel good about that? That's fine. But I'm just telling you, there's going to be 4 or 5 prominent players on this team that aren't going to be here because of Brock Purdy. Is it worth it? You tell me at John Lund Radio. So we've gone through 5 and 7. CMC hurt, injuries, quit I've accused them of. 2020 and now, the only reason I put that up there is that's what this season is. The injuries from 2020, the injuries from now. And I'm saying, okay, maybe they can bounce back. 2020, they were younger, they were cheaper. I told you that already. Brock's worth. Shut Fred down. The whole thing about shut Fred down is more the big picture of what do they do now? Do you force these guys to come back? Do you play balls out to the end? Do you try to win the division and slide in so that Philly or Minnesota or Detroit can kick your ass in the first round? Is it really worth it? I'm not saying you tank because teams don't do that. You gotta have respect for the game. But all these injuries that are piling up at this point now as the 49ers continue to reel through 12 weeks and we've got, 5 more games? They could potentially win those games. I mean, you could go to Miami, I guess, and go across the country. You have Arizona. You have the Rams. I mean, could they win these games? Conceivably, yes. But again, injuries, excuse, explanation, I don't see it. So to me, it's not only shut Fred down, it's, hey, CMC, it's okay. Don't rush back. I don't know how prominent that injury is or how bad that injury is, but non-contact injuries are never good, and that's what happened to CMC on Sunday night against the Bills. So we'll see where that goes. I would just round it up for next year. So give me your thoughts on all these topics. The Buffalo game made you sick. We don't need to talk deeply about that other than the topics I've given you. Now, if you want to, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to talk about it. But the big picture stuff, no, Kyle should not be fired. Yes, he needs some more help. I think the coaches need to be better next year. I think the window is not completely shut on the 49ers, but they need to make some big changes. Would you give Brock the $50 or $60 million? Are they going to be forced to? Because it is hard to find a quarterback. Trey Lance was bad. Brock drops in their lap. Everybody loves Brock. Maybe I'm crazy. But I'm thinking to myself, $50 or $60 million and you lose 5 or 6 guys? Is Brock that good? And I'm not basing it on Buffalo on Sunday night. That's not fair. But I'm not so sure. So give me all your thoughts. If you have any questions about the 49ers as well, give me your thoughts on that as well. What did I miss? Big picture items on the 49ers. That's what I take out of the Buffalo game on Sunday night. And did they quit? Give me your thoughts. John Lund Talks Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe where you get your favorite podcast. I'm going to be doing collaborations. We're going to have tons of guests. We're starting it all this week, so make sure that you subscribe and hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is the best place to get me. Ask your questions there at John Lund Radio. Let's talk some Niners or anything else that's on your mind. Happy holidays. Happy Sunday night. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.